The last set, or the last perspective, I suppose, we'll be talking about in ideological criticism is critical race and neo or post-colonial perspectives. So let's begin. So critical race theory is focused on, as you might imagine, the depictions of essentialism and racial hierarchies. When I say essentialism, I'm referring to essentialism relative to racial and ethnic identities. So when we have sort of really stereotypes or archetypes of what various people, according to their racial and ethnic identity, what they're like, right? That's essentialism. Just assuming that all people of a certain heritage there are a certain way or a certain type of person. So we're looking at essentialism. How are they reduced to these idea of it sort of an essential sort of element or understanding of what it is to be black or Latinx or Asian American and so forth, right? And that could be about athleticism, it could be about intellect, it could be about issues of work ethic and so forth, right? And the racial hierarchies that get built there, right? Racial hierarchies about who is the most trustworthy, who is really ultimately the best citizen or the ideal citizen. Obviously, we're also going to be looking at issues of white privilege, looking at the ways that white identity is just taken for granted, the way it is set as the norm, and so whether it is a speech or whether it is a TV show, a movie, a commercial, the ways that white culture is the norm and everything else that's not white, all other people's sort of racial and ethnic identities are always made the other, the one that's different in some way. So looking for the way that whiteness is normalized. Colonialism is dead. Long live colonialism, right? So colonialism, if you think about, learning about the people coming from first England and other countries, setting up colonies here in the Americas. I mean, colonies actually all around the globe. Right, colonialism, right? That's about you go and you plant your flag somewhere and you claim it for yourself. Now, of course, many times when you're planting the flag, other people live there, but now for some reason you're the official, largely because of Western practices about and notions about, say, owning land, right? That you could own land as a certain sort of think about that. Like, can you own land? How do you own like land? But yet I own land and stay off it. Okay. So colonialism is about when one culture's dominance or subjugation of another, right? So we're not just talking here about the land anymore, but colonialism has to do with one culture dominating or subjugating another, taking another culture and pushing it aside, or treating that other culture as being in service of its own. Right? This could be about the exploitation of one culture by another. Right, so we're going to look at some, or you rather, when this lecture is over, going to look at some examples of the ways in which other cultures and places that are not here in the U.S. are depicted about being very much about working to be at the service of the U.S. Right, and which we could argue is a certain exploitation, but at very least, it's the idea that these other people, those people over there, they work and live and do things for us here, the white of the U.S., largely. Right? So colonialism is over, generally, only in the sense that the claiming of lands is more or less over, though we still see some of it, in Russia and so forth. Okay, but so colonialism itself is sort of over in terms of claiming of lands and colonies, and Monroe Doctrine and other doctrines and so forth. So we get to NeoColonialism, and neo is new. When things are new, that's always good, right? New is better, right? Supposedly. All right, yeah, so this is new ways of subjugation and dominance, and so no longer is it subjugation and dominance through the taking of lands, right? We're looking here at the ways in which it's colonial, that people are being subjugated through other ways. And so how is, say, dependent created or sustained? So making other people now dependent upon the dominant culture. How is that created and how is that sustained? Right? How is one culture used as a model for another? I mean, you may well be familiar with the fact that in the United States, one of the sort of most benevolent agenda of the white colonists and settlers and those generations that followed here in the Americas was to bring Christianity to the native peoples. I say it's the most benevolent because there are other times that they simply slaughtered the native people. So even the best of it's sort of bad, right? But the idea that yes, so one culture here, the white European culture, uses a model for all their people here, the native people of the Americas. We also get post-colonialism, post, of course, meaning after. It's the idea that, so we're living in a time now when supposedly we're no longer engaging in, the work of colonization, but so now it's about, so how do those who've been colonized, right, the formerly colonized, how do they see history? How do they see these events? And how do the former colonizers see events? There's an article in there if you want to look at some of the past walkthrough articles. There's a nice piece in there about Pocahontas by Boucher and Ono, or Ono and Boucher. I forget who's first, Derek or Kent. But anywho, and it gets at this idea. But yeah, so how do those different people see the story? And I got a few memes for you, because what's a good solid lecture without a meme? Right? And this is all sort of in honor of Thanksgiving. This is coming up here, right? So here we have a depiction. This is very much the image or the story as told by the colonizers. Here we have the sort of generous white people going and feeding and the native people, helping the native people to feel at home on land that the white people just claim for their own, right? You might notice here, right, the white woman showing the native woman, you see, here things are, and here the white woman so generously serves the native peoples, right? And notice how then the white people here, and then here, and here, the way they all sort of surround and encompass the native peoples to make it seem like the people who are naturally there are really the white people, and the visitors, the people who sort of entered into the scene, are the native people, and therefore it makes the white people seem so much more generous, right? That's a certain telling of history. We might look at these events in a different way. Here's a little cartoon for you. Thanksgiving, celebrating the day Americans fed undocumented aliens from Europe. Ouch. And the last one, from this set anyway, undocumented immigrants refuse to learn local language, still get food assistance, right? And so these last two slides pushing up against that narrative. So here are those who've been colonized. There's a resistance to that, or this is a critique of colonizers, right? Just hoping you get the idea here generally of colonizer and colonized. I have two more for you. This is a famous poster. Who's the illegal alien pilgrim? This is a famous poster. This man is, what I believe is a ceremonial Aztec dress, right? So this is pretty famous. Then we have this other one. It's a bit more funny. No, not the cranberries. Do you want them to stay? Serve them eel or something else that's equally gross, right? Just the idea of be careful of who you make feel welcome. And so this is, again, trying to shift the emphasis from the benevolent colonizers to recognize the colonizers are just that. They're the ones who have come in and they've sort of taken over, and there was generosity offered by native peoples. Now this last one is one of my most favorite memes and cartoons at Thanksgiving time. The family sitting around the table, a very white-looking family. Also note where the two oldest males are seated. But anyway, right. Thank you, Jesus, for this food. Well, I say Jesus because in the next frame we see de nada, right? So thank you, Jesus, or thank you, Jesus, right? All right. After this, there are three commercials about colonialism specifically for you to look at, and some others that deal with issues of race. Some of those have the commentary embedded in where you can see the original and then see the commentary embedded. There are two in which commentary is not embedded, and that's for the Bush and Bowl, I believe is who it is, for the sheets. And then there is also the one for Cabo San Lucas. And these are, the one for Cabo San Lucas is from 2014 after they had a hurricane. In both of those, think about the way that there are there are cultures that are being treated as the other and still being used and exploited for the benefit of white consumers, and consumerism does include tourism. So I want you to think about that as you're watching those commercials.